Hi, everybody. Welcome to another webinar with one of our cherished and most appreciated suppliers into the group, both as an advisor and somebody as a business, as Project Rising, who can actually do things for us. Now, Tim and I talk about AI online, offline, down the line, fishing line, quite a lot about, is it ready? Is it fit for purpose? Is it ready? What can work? What can't work? But Tim's got some ideas to share today. Again, we've done this with a limited audience. It happens to be one of my most favourite people has managed to join us, which is Richard, or AKA Sir Dickie Fisher. So we're going to have some fun with this. But Tim, I was asking how to really describe what it is that you do, but it's almost fractional, outsourced.
I like to say that I talk to computers and my team build it properly. So we look at how to use AI capabilities and to apply it to make genuine change in business, increasing revenues, reducing costs. And that might be on a fractional basis, consulting, it might be on a build basis.
Okay, brilliant. So without more ado then, can I pass it over to you just to share where we're going with this? And we'll try and have the best 35 minutes of our lives.
The best 35 minutes of our lives. This sounds quite challenging.
Yeah.
That's
I've had a shit life. We should be fine.
Let's get this sharing window to work. Okay, so we're going to talk about value-based process automation. So not just automating for the hell of it, but how to choose the right process to automate and what really makes a good place to start. So I'm Tim Davis. I lead Project Rising. We help companies to build an unfair advantage through AI. Lots of businesses across the globe are using AI in at least one function. Getting on for half have deployed it in 3 functional areas. 83% of companies globally now class AI as a strategic priority. And a stat that I really love is 1% of companies believe that their AI deployment is fully mature. Every single one of those companies is lying, because you can't be fully mature with a technology that's changing so fast. Every individual and business is somewhere on this graph. They're either in ignorance and they think that AI is about terminators. They're in denial and think that it won't impact their job. They've heard about it in the news, but they're not doing anything about it. They're playing with ChatGPT, with Claude, maybe even with Claude Code on an individual basis, but at a company level, there's no shared use. Maybe they're getting into a company level, shared data, shared prompts, and that tracked usage and understanding, and maybe even fine tuning of models, but not yet generating profit from it. Maybe they're truly generating profit. They're improving their product offering. They're solving the impossible. We like to work towards AI native businesses where there is a combination of human and AI talent, where the business itself effectively becomes a mini AGI, where it understands itself and it is able to auto self-improve. This leads to massive increases in output. So when we talk about value-based process automation, we're just talking about how to choose the right one, avoid mistakes, and get a result that works in production. Projects don't fail because the technology is bad. They fail because the process was never properly understood in the first place. The team knows it's slow, manual, everybody's annoyed with it, but they don't really know how to improve it. But when it comes to time to automate, can you get everybody on the same chart to draw out a picture of how it actually works, describe the decisions, the exceptions, or the real source of delay? It's a real challenge. But it's a case of crap in, crap out. If you automate a process that wasn't properly understood, speed isn't going to make that any better. AI can't fix missing rules. Automation doesn't fix broken ownership. You need to know what's actually going on, where the value sits, and what's going to break when real life gets involved. The solution is basically to choose the right process and map it appropriately. to look at whether it's actually ready, to make sure you've chosen the right candidate, and to brief suppliers in a way that's going to get you better answers. So we'll go through a process here that you could follow that will help you choose what to automate first. It is not the one that gets talked about the most. It's not the one that annoys the most senior person in the business. It's not the one that's the most exciting when somebody says, oh, we could do this with AI. Excitement isn't the answer. The best process is where the pain's real, the rules are obvious, the volume's going to make a difference, and you can actually measure whether it's impacted the business or not quickly. The model, the platform, the vendor at this stage is irrelevant. There's so many choices out there. You could spend your entire life trying to choose which thing to do it on. A better question is, what are you actually trying to do? So where are you losing time? Where are there repeats? What's causing delays? Where are the errors? How are customers being impacted? And most importantly, where are you losing money? The strongest return is going to be where the process happens often, follows a regular pattern. There is manual effort that adds up, adds no value. It's got process delays within it, but you can measure the total process time start to end, and it has a clear outcome. If there isn't pain and there isn't repeatability, don't bother starting with that as the right process. You need to be able to compare the processes, and you could have a simple rubric that just looks at how often does it happen, and you can score these things. How costly are the mistakes? How easy is it to define rules? Can you access the data? How visible would improvement be? But really, you want to focus in on those few processes that could make a real difference. High pain is not enough. Regular volume is not enough. Enthusiasm is definitely never enough. There's got to be pain, repeatability, and feasibility at a point that meets. So don't go with the biggest shouting voice. Go with something that is measurable, repeatable, and is going to make a difference when it's solved within the business. So what makes a process ready for automation? You need to know the start point. You need to know the inputs. The steps have got to be consistent. Decisions can be described. The exceptions are well known and can be documented. You know what the output is. There is a clear owner for the process, and you can say whether it's been successful or not and can measure that. You've got access to the data, and the economics make sense to attack it. More importantly, you need to actually build confidence within the business that automating processes makes sense. So the first win is actually better than a big idea. If you want to solve something small, solve it well in a way that you can prove to the business to get buy-in for future automation. You need to create confidence, show improvement, and most importantly, teach the business how to do the next one better. So fast payback will need short cycle times on a process, needs to be repetitive, needs to be simple, has to have a clear single owner, isn't working well at the moment, or has lots and lots of manual requirements to make it a good experience for the customer. And a good story. Everybody loves a good story. If you can show previously this process was taking X hours per week of Joe's time, and now it's just requiring light checks, and it's working brilliantly. That's a great story that you can sell to the wider business. You're not really trying to save time with the first process automation. You're trying to create belief that this is going to make a difference on an ongoing basis. You're sowing seeds for future automation. So how do you map a process? First of all, don't start by mapping the process. SIPOC is something that came out of Six Sigma, and it stands for supplier, inputs, process, output, customer. And like all good processes, you start at the back and work the other way. So we actually start by listing out the customers of the process, the outputs that those customers expect from the process, a one-liner to say what the process is, the inputs to that process, and the suppliers of those inputs. And what we're really doing here is framing the conversation to get everybody on the right page before you start talking about the depths of a process. You're stopping people jumping into detail. You're getting everybody aligned, and you're making sure that it's really clear before you start, this is actually what we're focusing on. It allows you to avoid getting stuck in some of the ugly exceptions. There are a million different approaches to mapping a process, and you could choose one flow diagram method over another. It doesn't really matter. The best thing you can do is to get a group of people who own and run this process together in a room, hit record, and walk through who starts it, talking around the SIPOC, who touches it, what are the systems, where are the checks, what happens and what gets sent back, where does it go wrong. We're really looking here to capture as much information verbally as possible, because that transcript can be passed into your favorite AI model, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, doesn't matter, and ask it to convert that transcript into a process diagram that can then be reviewed. You're really trying to get everybody's thoughts aired rather than trying to create the perfect diagram. Sorry, I saw there was a chat come through. I can't actually see them when I'm talking. Okay. So a useful process map will show the sequence, who owns what data is needed, where the outputs are created, where the decision points are, what causes delays and what the wait points, where are the exceptions, and where people hand off. You can actually draw this out in a million levels of detail. You could put swim lanes so that you show the moves between departments, but it really doesn't matter if you're just trying to get an initial description of what the process does and have something that you can share internally and potentially share with suppliers to get a quote for helping you out. But the most expensive thing to ignore is always the exceptions. When you get a group of people around a whiteboard and try and draw out a process, you will spend hours drawing exceptions, but you just need to list them. And the reason at this point we're listing them is because you can then decide whether they're included in the automation or whether when this exception occurs, it triggers a side process that still runs as manual. You don't have to automate everything in a process. You can automate the common path, and when things hit an exception, trigger a human to follow a process that you know works. Excuse me. Pilot will look great, but if it's not going to work in production, what's the point? The question shouldn't be, can you automate it? It's, how do you keep this working under pressure? And that will be by having a combination of automation and human workaround for the exceptions. You try and automate everything first time, it's not going to stick. It starts small and incremental. Okay, in terms of costs, you get a quote from an external supplier to produce a piece of automation for you. They're thinking about all of these things. If you can help to do some of the elements in advance, you are reducing the cost that you will experience. If the supplier is coming in, they're having to do discovery, there's no documented process, they're having to map the process and design the solution in advance, then the cost that comes through as the build cost is going to include all of the blue, all of the green, because there's so many unknowns. And so if you want to keep the cost low or manageable, make sure that you understand in advance how these things are going to be done. And the more you can share about your process in detail, the better. But make sure you're asking about how these things are going to be covered. Something that's cheap to buy will often be expensive to run. Low initial quote. Buy cheap, buy twice, we've all heard it. But if the process is unclear, the assumptions that led to that process cost, if they're then changed, will add more cost in later. If the data is unclean, then you've got a data manipulation piece that's going to add money. If the ownership is weak, then the process isn't going to stick. If support is missing, every time something goes wrong, it's a crisis. So you shouldn't really be asking, what does it cost to build? You want to ask, what does it take for this to work well over time? And that might be something that you manage internally. It might be something that you manage with an ongoing partner. But don't look at process automation as something that you just buy in and it's going to work magically forever, because that just doesn't match with reality. So what suppliers need from you? If you want an accurate quote, better the scope, better the process map, the easier it's going to be for them. If you clearly understand the volumes and can communicate what the inputs and outputs are, where the exceptions are and where you want those exceptions to remain human, the systems that are involved, security or compliance requirements, how success will be judged and the result you actually want, you're going to get a better price because the supplier isn't going to be guessing around these things. And the more guesswork there is, the bigger the price. When you get a proposal from a supplier, there's some fairly obvious questions to ask them. But fundamentally, you're checking whether they've gone through and they actually understand the problem and you're clear as to how it's going to continue working on an ongoing basis. So don't ask for vague things like, can you use AI to improve this? Be specific about what you want to achieve. Don't hide the stuff that's awkward, share it, because then you can have an open and honest conversation. Make sure that there's no ambiguity, because the more clear you are with a supplier, the better the quote will be, the better the overall experience will be, and the more likely that your process will continue to run on an automated basis on an ongoing basis. Double use of the word basis. Good measure. So for a practical method, choose the process that's going to be a great starting example, that's going to build faith within the business, but has value. Complete a SIPOC, map it, and then share this brief that you've gone through with a few suppliers and get a feel for who actually understands and can help you. If you've got the resources internally to attack it, do so. You don't necessarily need external resources. The ability to build lightweight automation and AI agents with something like Zapier or Make will get you a long way within your business if you've got the resources that can do it. But if not, talk to an expert external resource. But make sure when you launch that process, it's monitored. Somebody in the business owns it and is feeding back both to the supplier and to the wider business. Don't start with the flashiest. Start where it's going to work and it's going to stick. And make it a compelling story so the whole business will buy into continuing the automation journey. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a do it now and you're done forever. Let's build a process that you can continue building more and more automation capability over time. So map first, then automate with confidence. If you can map a process, you can see where the value is. You can avoid fragile automations that will break in a year's time and you can't get hold of the agency again. You'll get more accurate quotes. You'll reduce your delivery risk and you'll be able to create a win that earns the right to do more within the business over time. And just to prove I'm not AI, you can see we've got company walking around behind me. So we help businesses to deploy AI in a simple, safe and secure way. I'd love to have your questions. I'll stop presenting now so we can talk. It's easier that way and see you.
Tim, thank you, Robert. For a business that is, let's say an intimate business, and they can see that their process bonkers, right? So quite a lot of staffing brands are really hot on process. We're all pretty good at it. We understand what happens next. And we can see that if we could do more of X, we would make more money. Who needs to own that? How many people need to invest time into it? And so as a real that, and I know that you're going to say it's as long as a piece of string, but that's okay. But it's one of those things that people just don't. I think people think, well, all of that sounds absolutely brilliant. If it's going to cost me £5 and it's going to take me a month's effort, but actually recurring revenues off of that one thing would pay for itself month in, month out, then most people would do it if they can understand what happens. But we've had a couple of instances recently where some of my busy mates who are, not daft at all, have got into a process and suddenly from what they thought was an expectation has gone through the roof because they kept adding bits on. It's like, but you can fill in the gaps for me.
Yeah, so two questions that I'll answer, Gary. First of all, who should own the process? If the process is fundamental to the business operation and it is effectively the most significant driver of revenue in the business. The types of intimate businesses you're talking about, all day long, it's owned by the owner manager of the business because they are the person ultimately that is most keen on increasing the revenue, and making a shift in the throughput of that will increase the overall revenue and profit within the business. So I think it should be owned from the top. To answer your second question, you're absolutely right. It depends on the complexity and the add-ons later. So you can approach it one of two ways. You can make sure you've got a very detailed description of the process that follows the sorts of approach that I've just described, and then you'll be able to get a fixed price quote to build and a fixed price quote to maintain. Alternatively, there will be agencies like ours that offer a partnership retainer, where instead of it effectively being a build cost, there is an ongoing retainer relationship where they will offer expert advice and build for a set amount per month. And they'll just agree which bits are built on top of that each month. So in that way, the cost is known and it's built on a proven growing relationship. And both paths can work. So, I mean, you can go into an example for a recruitment agency that's placing people into San Francisco and New York-based VC-backed companies, huge placement fees. You could argue that if you can increase their placement fees, double the amount per month, that might add 100, 200 grand a month revenue. There could be a company that would do a proportional cost of that. So take effectively a revenue share as opposed to a retainer or a process build cost. It really depends on the process that's being automated and the amount of difference it can make for the business.
Can you give us just a rough estimate of building something for, so one of the businesses I'm working with at the moment, they create wills. And as a result of that, so they're seeing lots of people doing loads of data capture. They've been sending out lawyers to people's homes to talk about their wills, but actually, quite a lot of that could actually be captured online. They could do it over Teams.
We've actually already got two deployed solutions for this in the will space. One where it works off the back of a Teams call, and one that's in pre-production, which is triggered by an AI call in the first place. So there isn't even a consultant involved in the process. So for low cost wills, it's effectively a fully autonomous process, and it only becomes human in the loop where there's LPAs and trusts involved. The cost for building a process to take a transcript from a Teams meeting to produce wills is single figure thousands.
Is that Paul King? Paul King?
No.
Okay, well, he'll be all over that. Look, I've got some friends with us. Rich, Johnny, anything that you wanted to ask or challenge?
I've got nothing to ask, mainly because this conversation has led me to look at things from a different direction. Basically, Tim, in the recruitment space, everybody's plying me with AI tools that are going to make my job better and make me earn a load of money. Problem is, when you go into those conversations and those demos, they fix some of the problem and nothing fix everything. So I think I've been taking the view that I'm going to sit back and wait for something to land that probably ticks every box. So you've thrown something out there that's a different way of looking at it, which is don't look at it like that at all. Don't look at the supplier. Think about the problem you're going to solve and then work it backwards from there. So that's kind of, I've got no questions because I'm sitting there thinking, I feel like a bit of a daft bugger thinking a bit the wrong way.
Well, I think, Richard, if you think about the 1% improvement, if every day you're able to make a 1% improvement to the business, that compounds really, really quickly. Or you can wait for the perfect tool, but when the perfect tool comes out, every agency is going to jump on it. So it's just how do you make that incremental improvement so that it's increasing the performance of the business, and you can start that today.
Johnny, mate.
Hiya. First of all, I'm sorry that I've got no video. I came out the meeting and came back in, and I've still got no video. So I apologize for that. In relation to AI, I'm pretty new at AI, but what I have done, I'm in the recruitment space as well. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I'm in the recruitment space as well, but I have taken some of the tools that are out there and they're working extremely well for me. I've jumped on an AI outreach tool. I've also jumped on a candidate sourcing tool, and both are working. I'm very impressed by them. I'm sure I'll get to a stage where they won't do as much as I need them to. But for the time being, these two tools that cost relatively little money have made a massive improvement to my company.
And that's fantastic, Johnny. I think taking that leap early, looking at the tools and seeing the impact they can make is superb. And it's now just looking around the rest of the business and going, okay, now what? Now what? And so rather than just standing still with using those same tools, and whether you're using Instantly, Clay, or any other, a number of other millions of tools that are out there, it's okay, where are the other restrictions in the business that are slowing down the velocity, slowing down the path to cash? How else can we accelerate? So not just relying on a couple of tools, but just thinking, how do we move to become an AI native business where we're constantly looking for that improvement so that we can stay on the leading
I
edge?
agree with what you're saying. When you take on these tools, though, you don't use the whole tool at once. You start off with the bits that you need, and then there are other parts of that tool that you then go on to use. I'm not at the stage yet whereby um, I'm using the tools that I've purchased to the maximum capability. Once I get to that, if there's still a space, then I understand exactly where you're coming from.
So Johnny, what's holding you back using those tools to the maximum of their capabilities now, if you think there's still improvement to be had?
Well, there is improvement to be had. Now, as I say, I'm new to AI, and this has been a big leap for us. You know, we've taken on these two tools, one candidate sourcing and one outreach, and we're expanding on those daily, but we've not reached the full capacity of what they can do.
Excellent.
So we're not standing still with them. You know, we're improving on them daily, but we've not got to the capacity. Once we get to their capacity, we'll then know what we need.
Best of luck to you. Sounds like you're on a great path.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We've got Gary talking to us on mute. Oh, looks like
I know. I was trying. I just couldn't find the button. The one thing I would say is for smaller businesses, I think there still should be room for somebody within the business to take care of and be mindful of, or have it as their exclusive job to look after your data. So I'd have a data analyst and someone who's looking at my business systems and best practice, because that's a huckleberry who this would sit alongside. So if we're thinking of a £35,000 investment, or someone who's doing work placement for a year out of uni to help you with one, looking at how you use your data, how you place people, what's the background of the people that you place most, and where do they come to your CRM? Everyone's got a CRM, which is absolutely riddled with loads of customers who are hiring every year, but they don't come to us. We've got loads of candidates who we've got on our CRM that we don't even speak to, right? So there's all of that data there. I'll be focusing all of my activities as in terms of AI. One is trying to, if I could save one salary in my back office and invest that one salary in terms of my data, my middle office. Oh my God. I think I would make an absolute mint, and I'll get that person to be my AI agent to say, well, you can't do that. How do we do that? To be as efficient as possible. And it's a culmination of AI and automation, right? So it's not everything that is badged as AI is true AI. 90% of it is automation, and people just think we'll call it AI because you're going to get a big multiple at the end of the day, but it's good for marketing. What's your opinion on having someone within smaller businesses quicker doing this stuff, Tim?
I think every business needs to have somebody that they trust that is giving them their guidance, whether that's a employee or a retained expert consultant. Having somebody that's guiding you is critical because it's very difficult to keep up with what's possible in terms of the ever-changing capabilities of these AI tools and how that is being deployed in automation. I was actually having a debate with a senior HR leader of a Globo Corp the other day, and I was suggesting that actually human resources as what may end up being the owning organization of AI going forwards. Because we've looked at everything being people and job spec for so long. And that organization, over the years, they've rebranded themselves talent, but they're still people fundamentally. We're now moving to a point where a lot of the work capacity is not just being delivered by people, it's being delivered by AI agents. And in bigger organizations, the sort of custodian of that talent, of what that productive capacity is, will ultimately be HR, because they're the ones that understand what needs to be done in the different departments. Smaller organizations don't have the luxury of dedicated HR, but they do need somebody within the business that's thinking about what is that split between humans doing work and AI doing work, agents running 24/7. Because you can get to a point where your costs come down or your productivity goes through the roof for this. Right now, 98% of the code that we're producing is being written by AI agents. And it's still managed, it's still following our same best practices, but our output volume has gone through the roof without adding 100 heads.
I've got to say that I was speaking with Danny Wigglesworth earlier today, and he was talking about how many people are applying for recruitment consultants jobs who were in HR because AI has actually replaced them, which I think is, you know, this is a recruiter community. And it's the joy of joys. Right? So that's quite funny, but it's having people who are a bit smarter than us in terms of this tech. I'm not sure I'd redeploy anybody. I think I could get somebody straight out of university would be better than an HR person to do this stuff. But you're right. We just shift how we spend salaries on things.
But I mean, fundamentally, the service that you're providing companies as recruitment specialists is the same as an internal HR resource. You're providing the.
You're about to get whacked, brother.
Oh, I'm not. I'm not about to get whacked because I'm saying you can have that role just as easily as a HR department can, because you're not necessarily placing people. Why wouldn't you be placing capability? You can be resellers of agents just as much as you're placers of people.
Say that again.
You could be selling agents to deliver work just as much as you're getting placement fees.
So isn't that just a tech product, like a CRM,
No,
like a Chrome extension to a thing?
An agent doing a piece of work. So at the moment, you're selling a person to do a piece of work, and you're getting a placement fee. You get a placement fee for agents. You understand the work.
Okay, we're going to go meet at the German gym again, and we put this to rights, because if that's the case, there are some people around our communities right now who'd be going, recruitment is a joyful thing. If it wasn't for candidates, clients, and staff, if I can reduce one of those numbers, that'd be brilliant. My life would be a third better.
It's a really interesting thought experiment. So
isn't it?
Somebody needs to try it.
That's brilliant. Tim, what's happening in gaming? Because I know Rich is here and he's MEC Gamer. And he works in that MEC Gamer, yeah. So he works in that space. What is there anything that's happening in terms of AI and agents that we should be mindful of for Richard's space?
So we're seeing far more agents able to deliver the lower level coding and cartooning and animation activities. The biggest change that I see coming is the interactive virtual worlds that are fully AI native. So at the moment, we've only seen relatively basic versions, but where you can say, actually, I want to be the Stay Puft Man. Actually, I want to be able to crush houses. And you effectively describe an environment and it is generatively built around you. So in the same way as AI models have been producing words, that's effectively got rid of a lot of copywriters' jobs, is now producing code that's massively increased the amount of programming that can be done. We're seeing the same in image, in video, in music, and it will come for games too. So there will be fully immersive worlds that are effectively dynamically generated by an AI model. And that potentially moves some of the traditional revenue from the games companies to the tech giants again. You can see that Microsoft would very happily deploy this sort of stuff directly into Xbox, for example. But it's not here now. So ultimately, the challenge is finding the right talent and placing them remains. It's just that people who have the ability to work in combination with agents versus just the traditional animators or coders will be the resources that you want to place because they'll have a higher ticket value to the company.
So effectively, know your processes, understand what's going on within your business, look for gaps where you can actually, where doing more quicker will have an impact. If you save time, make sure that time's used really productively. We don't want to spend more money to make it easier for people to make the same amount of revenue because we become less profitable, because that doesn't make any sense.
And just look at what's to be the biggest in the business.
Yeah, and just trying to look over that horizon about what's next, and just thinking about that, and have someone own all this stuff. Is that a decent summary?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Was that good, everyone?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, Johnny, lovely to hear from you, fella. Dicky Fish, word up. And Emma, thanks for putting it together. Tim, you're a ledge. So thank you very much. If someone goes to Celtic Manor, doesn't play golf, literally, you shoot yourself. That's terrible. Right, go get some bats and have some fun.
Speak soon.
Right,
Cheers, Tim.
Take care. Thank you
guys.
very much.
Cheers, laters. Bye.
Bye all.